Alright, what's going on everyone? Today we're going to be upgrading the Arcane Aerialist starter deck. Now I do not know where this deck is for you. This is a foundation deck, it's a new player deck, and because it's new, I'm not sure if they're putting it in the starter deck tab or if you're just unlocking it and it's going into your decks. But mine's down here. These are all the starter decks. We're going to be upgrading every one of these. Today we're upgrading this one, the enter deck name Azorius deck. If you want to keep the original, and if it's in the starter deck tab, you can't edit it at all, so you need to select it and clone it. And mine has missing cards because the temples and stuff. We'll take this out. I gotta edit my deck. So here's the thing about this deck. It's misleading. It has Giada as the cover. Giada is a tribal angel card. The problem is, if we type angel, this is how many angels we have. It's not an angel deck at all. It is in fact a flying deck. It's a flying matters deck. We have flying, other creatures flying, get +1/+1, and everything has flying. It's a flying deck, but they put Giada on the cover, which is a tribal angel card. You would have gotten the foundation version, but it's a tribal angel card, but there's no angels. Also, another problem with angels, there aren't very many good ones at common and uncommon. Inspiring Overseer is good. Youthful Valkyrie is pretty good, but we start running pretty thin pretty fast. If you want to build an angel deck, you're probably playing rares. This gives you access to Resplendent Angel, Lyra Dawnbringer, Exemplar of Light, Sarah Paragon's pretty good. In an Azorius deck, you could potentially even play this. I don't think there's enough flash, but there's Steel Seraph, which is definitely playable. So yeah, you're definitely going to be in rares and mythics, and our goal is to upgrade this with only commons and uncommons. This is a budget upgrade. Should have said that first. Whoops, I forgot. But this is a budget upgrade. No rares, commons and uncommons. So yeah, let's just upgrade this on a budget. It's going to be a Flyers deck. It is a Flyers deck. And if you want to do angels, you got a copy of Giada. That's pretty cool. And you can add that to all the rares and mythics that you need to unlock or craft. So let's start. I'm going to move this over so I have room over here. Let's start with Empyrean Eagle. We want 4 of these for sure. And we're going to take out Dazzling Angel. This doesn't do anything for us. 3 mana, 2/3. When another creature enters, we gain 1 life. We're not a life gain deck. We don't have any life gain payoffs. Doesn't do anything for us. This, on the other hand, all of our other flying creatures get +1/+1. It's the whole reason to play the deck. I wish Favorable Winds had been in Foundations. It was not, but nevertheless, we want 4 of these. So we'll take out 2 Dazzling Angel, go up to 4 Empyrean Eagle. Because it's like the reason to play this type of deck. Next, my god, Aegis Turtle. Why? Why is that in the deck? 1 mana, 0/5. But why though? I mean, you'd want it in like a control deck that's trying to stall, but even then, like, no thanks. So we're going to take these out, and we're going to add 2 Healer's Hawk. 1 mana, 1/1, flying, lifelink, could be a 2/2 lifelinker, and it's just a great starting point, right? You play this early, it chips in for a couple damage, later it starts getting pumped, and just, becomes very scary. Next, Hopeful Hunter is fine. When it enters, draws a card. This is absolutely 100% playable, especially in tribal cats, but we're a flying deck, it doesn't have flying, so we're going to replace it with a slightly more expensive version of like the same type of card. 3 mana, 2/1. When it enters, we gain 1 and draw. Same thing, kinda, right? Very similar, but we just care about flying. It's a little bit more expensive, but something you'll notice about the curve is we have a lot of 2-drops. So I kind of feel pretty okay about this. We'll take 2 of these out. We'll add 2 of these in, and that's totally fine. We actually have a lot of 3s, but we'll fix that. You'll see. Next, Deadly Riposte. It's fine. 2 mana, deal 3 damage to a tapped creature, gain 2 life. Very good against red aggro. However, we have a pretty cool card to play in this deck, and that is Case of the... That's not the right card. I'm in rares and mythics still. Ha. This one. Yes, that's the one. This is the one we want. Okay, I was very confused. Okay, so, both 2 mana. This is going to deal 3 damage. It has to be to a tapped creature. This is, when it enters, we choose a creature, then we deal 1 damage for each creature we have. So if we have 3 creatures, it's going to deal 3 damage just the same. The benefit of this, however, is when we attack with 3 or more creatures, we're going to solve the case, and then everything's going to get +1/+0. So this is our Favorable Winds. I'll put it on screen if you're not familiar. Favorable Winds is like a classic in these blue-white Flyers deck. You play favorable winds on 2, you play Empyrean Eagle on 3, and that's like your curve. In our case, we're going to play this. Might take a few turns to solve it, but eventually we'll solve it and just pump all of our flyers, which is pretty good. And it's still a removable spell, right? Maybe sometimes a little bit clunky, but so is this. So that's fine. And this is our current standard favorable winds. And as such, we're going to take out Gold Vein Pick for 2 more. So this is a fine card. It's not really, but it pumps a flyer, right? Giving a creature +1/+1 isn't that exciting, but if it has flying, then it's kind of good. And that's the idea. But it's also pretty good to pump all your flyers. And yeah, pretty simple here. Let's just take 2 of these out. Get 2 of these in because it's pretty important for this type of deck. Next, Fog Bank. It's kind of awkward. It's a little bit awkward. It's technically a flyer, but it's got Defender, so we can't actually attack with it. And I want Bottomless Pool. So, this card, it's a tempo card. 1 mana, we're going to return a creature to its owner's hand. So this is a bounce spell. We can bounce flyers. We can just bounce our opponent's attackers so we can win the race, right? It's a tempo card. But for 5 mana in the late game, we can unlock the Locker Room, and then whenever our creatures deal damage, we're going to draw a card. It's only 1 card, no matter what. If we hit with 4 creatures, we draw 1. So it's not as powerful as it could be. It's an uncommon. The rare of this effect would be Enduring Curiosity, which is going to draw for every card that hits, ideally. But in common and uncommon, we still like the card draw. We're going to hit our opponent pretty consistently because our stuff has flying, and it's a great tempo card. And this is just, it's okay. It's awkward. I don't really like it that much. So we'll take this out. It looks expensive, right? Because it's going up here, but really, we're usually playing it as a 1-drop, and we'll get that 5-drop effect eventually. Next, I do want to fix the curve a little bit. We have a lot of 3-drops, and the way we do that is by taking out Stasis Snare for Ossification. The budget all-star that just like goes in every budget deck ever. These are pretty similar. We have 3 mana. When it enters, we exile a creature until this leaves the battlefield. Now, it does have flash, so that's cool, but 3 mana, exile something. This, on the other hand, 2 mana, doesn't have flash, has to go on a basic land, which we have a lot of. And when it enters, it exiles a creature or planeswalker. So it's 1 mana less, and it can hit planeswalkers. And the fact that it goes on a land doesn't really matter. I'd rather have the 2-drop, helps our curve a little bit, feels a lot better, much more consistent. Now, these last 2 changes I would say are optional, but I do think they're better. First, I want to take out Kite Sail Corsair for Dawning Patrol. So both of these are 2 mana, 2 power flyers. This one only has flying when it's attacking, but this has 1 extra power. And in the late game, hey, we can potentially pump our stuff. 5 mana to give our stuff +1/+1 is terrible. It's not good at all. But, you know, hey, it's there. And this just doesn't have it. So take 2 of these out, add 2 of these in. It's still a pretty mediocre flyer. And realistically, I would recommend checking. Just check for, there's a couple flyers you could put in that place instead. Like the big ones being Fairy Mastermind or Malcolm. Both of these would be huge. So check, like I have 4 or 3. Check your collection. Definitely check for those. If you have any of those, put either of these in over Dawning Marshal for sure. But on a budget, Dawning Marshal will have to do. And the final thing I want to change, Angel Vitality. It's just okay. Exiling a player's graveyard is definitely relevant and standard right now. There are a ton of Reanimator decks, from Valgavoth Reanimator decks to like the more low curve Oculus decks, right? Lots of stuff reanimating, but I just like this card so much. 3 mana, you make 2 1/1s, which is very powerful with Empyrean Eagle and this card, right? It's 4 power if we have this solved, and it helps us solve it, and it makes the removal portion more powerful. So 2 1/1s for 3, fantastic. And then we tap target creature and opponent controls. So we can do this like on the end step to make 2 flyers the opponent is expecting, as well as tap down a flying blocker. Fantastic tempo card. You usually either want to do this on your opponent's end step or before their combat if you're on the verge of dying. And then you untap and surprise, there's 2 to 4 damage that you're not expecting. Very good. So I just want to take 1 of these out and add 1 of these in because I think the card is pretty good. So that's our deck now. We do have plenty of weak cards that you could upgrade with rares. The big ones being Dawning Marshal, Sarah Angel's pretty bad, Cloud Blazer, basically all this top end stuff. Everything at the top end, as you see, it goes in our bad, not very good pile. The types of stuff you want to be looking for, I mean, it's pretty simple. You want to type flying up here, and you want to type creature here so you don't get the enchantments that add flying. The big ones that you want to look for, Sanguine Evangelist is pretty good. It doesn't have flying itself, but it makes 2/1/1 bats with flying. Sarah Paragon is not bad. It's a 4 mana 3/4, and you can play creatures that cost 3 or less from your graveyard, which is the majority of our creatures, as you see. And then the big ones that I talked about earlier, Fairy Mastermind, Malcolm. Both of these are crazy good. Malcolm is going to basically draw a card every turn. When he deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card and discard a card. But once he gets 4 counters, you get to cast the discarded card for free. Very powerful, much better than Dawning Marshal, for example. We also have Fairy Mastermind. Whenever the opponent draws their second card each turn, you draw. So all the control decks that are trying to outdraw you, right, mid-range decks, you just get to draw along with them, in addition to having a 2 mana, 2 power flyer. So it's aggro, you can flash it in end of turn when the opponent isn't expecting it. It pressures, and if the opponent's drawing cards, then you get to draw with them. And all of this, basically any of this, is better than any of this stuff. Like Cloud Blazer and Sarah Paragon, just as an example. This is going to draw 2, but this lets you cast all your stuff from your graveyard, right? I'd rather have 2 of these rather than 2 of these. Same thing with Sarah Angel. It's so expensive. 5 mana 4/4. I mean, a better angel than Sarah Angel is Lyra Dawnbringer. Let's just compare these side by side for a second. So we have a 5 mana 4/4 with flying and vigilance, or we can have a 5 mana 5/5 with flying, first strike, and lifelink that pumps our other angels. We don't have a lot of other angels, but just we could have Inspiring Overseer and Sarah Paragon maybe. But even without that, it's flying and vigilance versus flying, first strike, lifelink, so gain 5 per turn, and it's a 5/5 instead of a 4/4, right? So it's just better. So yeah, that's just some stuff to think about. Check your collection for those rares, and they're pretty good. Also, you can improve the mana base. One cool rare that you can play in the mana base is actually, this is also pretty good, by the way, 4 mana 4/3 flyer. When it dies, it becomes a land and it gives your spells rebound. Not bad, but there is a flying creature land, right? So if you pump this, when you have this in play or when you animate it, it becomes a 3/3 flyer, maybe a 4/3 or a 5/3 if you have this stuff going, right? So that's pretty good. Also, just replacing basics with, a Darker Waste, Sea Chrome Coast. This is pretty good too. Flood Farm, Verge. All of these would be nice. Just check that you have any and add any that you have. But that's our deck for now. Upgraded on a budget, commons and uncommons only. Plenty of room for improvement. You can definitely keep upgrading these. Check your rares, check your flyers. But that's it for now. Hopefully that's useful, guys. Deck list in the description, of course. We'll also be upgrading all 9 of the other decks, so subscribe if you want to see that. And in the meantime, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.